Hello everybody and welcome back to part 34 now of our Trumpeter 1/200 scale HMS Hood build. In this video I'm going to be carrying on with building the ship's boats. I'm not sure how many I'll get done this week. When you get into them they are quite complicated. They look fairly simple to start with when you lay just a few parts out on the bench. But I found from experience that they do take quite a bit of time. There's often quite a number of colours to be used on the boats, which all need painting separately and then assembling. And because of the size of them, really, it's something that you need to take quite a bit of care of to get a nice result with them. So last week we built the 45-foot launch and a couple of the 32-foot cutters. And this week we're going to carry on with the open boats. I don't think we'll get a chance to do any of the fast motorboats this week. There were 35-foot and 25-foot fast motorboats on the ship. But I think we'll have our work cut out just to do the open boats this week. So that'll include another launch, a 42-foot launch this time, which does have one small cabin on it. So that'll get us into the swing of building cabins on these little boats. And there are two 27-foot whalers to build, although they're not going to be fitted as part of the main complement of boats. They go on davits at the aft side of the ship. And because they overhang the side of the ship, I'm not going to be fitting those until almost the end of the build. But I'm going to make the boats themselves in this video. And the last one to build is a 30-foot gig, which fits inside one of the cutters that we built last week. I've also done a little bit more work and I've come back to the 45-foot launch that we built last week. I've had to repaint that, which I'll explain towards the end of the video. And I gave up trying to find the grating that I'd lost from that particular boat. So I made another one up and I'll show you that towards the end of the video as well, with that revised 45-foot launch and cutter. So quite a bit to do this week just on those four boats. So let's get over to the bench and we'll get the parts out for the whalers and the 30-foot gig and let's get those started. Right, so we'll build the gig first, which is this one. We need the Trumpeter part D19. We're not going to have too many brass parts for this gig. It's a delicate part, we'll have to be careful with that. Okay, so those are the parts. Just dry fit them to start off with. We have just a few bends to make with this. So there's a transom section at the back. As on the other boats, we've got these brackets to fold along the sides on each thwart. Okay, so I've just done a quick test fit of all those parts. There's no adjustment needed, but I am going to be careful. I'm going to have to be careful assembling them. The tolerances are quite fine on those three parts, so they're just going to need a little care putting them together. I just need to do the rudder. So this is just a simple fold on the rudder. Okay, so that's all the parts ready for the gig. They can all be primed and painted. As I did with the cutters, I've not used the brass folded part for this piece here, which sits on the bottom boards. It's far easier to use styrene strip cut to shape for that. It's a lot neater than trying to fold a piece of tiny etched brass up. So that's the gig all ready. Do the whaler next, or the whalers. There are two. These were on davits on the aft side of the ship. So the whalers are on E5. I've just been looking at the Trumpeter crutches as well, and they're actually quite nice. It might be worth using them rather than the Pontos parts that we have to fold up. So I'll just check those out, and of course the other thing with them is that there might just be a better fit with the hulls of these boats as well. So it might be another area where the Pontos option isn't the way to go. The whalers of course won't have any crutches, they're going to be on the davits hanging over the side. Again, we'll get the Pontos parts off. So just the thwart brackets to bend on these. There we are. So that's another batch of parts ready for painting for the two whalers there. So we'll get those over and primed, and again I'll be using Tamiya's plastic primer for the plastic hulls and some etch primer for the brass parts. It's time to finish these whalers and the gig off now. First thing I want to do is just glue the oars onto the whaler thwarts here, and there are 6 provided in the Pontos set for each whaler, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to fit 6 in, so I'm just going to fit 4. At least it'll give the impression of the oars being present. Once these are done, I'll just give the whole assembly a quick squirt with some more of the deck tan. I'll just remove any traces of super glue from the oars. So let's just give those a quick blast with the tan, and then we can start to put these together. The first thing I want to do is put the bottom boards in, which are these. And I'm going to have to put some super glue just on the inside edge. It's the only place where it's going to locate. There's very little for these parts to stick to. The contact points are very small, so you've just got to hope that you get the glue just in the right place. That appears to have worked. Just hold it down until it's set up. There's actually quite a lot of parts to these whalers. There's 3 main parts: the bottom boards, the thwarts, and then there's a rail around the top. So they should look quite busy on the davits when they eventually go on. Okay, we'll put the thwarts on now. Now, as I said, I've gone over these after fitting the oars. I've just gone over with another quick spray with the tan. Now, these don't normally require any glue, but I think I'm going to have to put something in that. It's a bit more slack than the other ones that I've fitted. I'm just putting a dot of glue on these, I'm not going all the way around. And I'm staying well away from the gratings. I don't want the super glue to flood into the gratings and spoil that detail. Okay, that's nice. And then this top rail goes on as well. So again, this is a part where I'm going to want very little glue. If any of the super glue does show, I'll get rid of it, because on all these boats I've just given them, or I'm going to give them, just a dusting over with some matte varnish, and that'll just hide any places where the super glue's showing. With these, I'm just going to go around the edge here just to extend the rubbing strip along the top. So I'll just paint that in with some of the deck tan with a paintbrush. Just want to drop the rudders in. I'm stowing these rudders. Okay, those are the 2 whalers. Right, it's time to do this gig now. So the bottom boards first. I haven't put the oars onto this one, so I better do that. The strip around the top here on this gig's very fine, so I'm just going to be able to tack it, that's all. And I'll just apply a tiny bit of thin super glue at intervals. Okay, I'm going to have to go in and touch that up a little bit. So I just need to do the tiller arm while we've got this tan out. And again, I'm just going to go around the side of the boat just to do the pick out the rubbing strip along the side. Okay, I want to give this gig and the two whalers a coat of matte varnish. That'll just eliminate any traces of gloss. You can just see here where there's a spot of glue that I've got on the bottom boards there. It's very small, but it's worth getting rid of. And there's a trace around the edge here where the glue spilled over a little bit. It's very difficult to cement these things without getting spots of glue here and there, but a coat of matte varnish just gets rid of all that. So we'll go and get those done, then we can assemble the gig onto the top of this cutter. Okay, so I'm happy enough with that. It's the gig and the cutter, so that'll be put to one side now together with these whalers ready for installation. So next up we've got this 42-foot motor launch, which does have a cabin on it, but not just the one at the back. So it's a nice ease into the more complicated boats with the cabins on them. So we'll start off, we want D18 first. A lot of the parts for these boats came off on the fret, so I'm just going to have to make sure that I've got the right parts for these. It should be fairly obvious, I hope. I'm pretty sure that that's right. I'll just make absolutely sure. Yeah. So again, we'll have to do our little bends of these brackets. I'm just going to have to be careful with this back one because the etch doesn't appear to have cut through. So it's not wanting to bend properly. I might just have to slide a very fine knife into there or a saw blade just to break the join. If we try and force it, it'll just twist the side of the deck here. So I've just had to get the nose of the pliers right in there and just pull to the side, and it's just broken the bond of the etch where it was joined together. So that's okay, that's come out alright. Then we just bend these brackets up. They add a nice detail, these brackets, to the side. It makes the hull look quite busy. These are very fragile joins. I'm just going to reinforce this with a bit of solder when I get the soldering iron out for the cabin. It was these fragile bends that caused me to break the grating off on the 45-foot launch, which I've subsequently lost. I've had to make another part for that. And it was because this broke off. I'm just going to run a bead of solder into that joint just to seal it up and strengthen it. That's much stronger, much better. When you just check the fit of these parts, they're sometimes a little bit tight into the sides of the boat, and what that does is it pushes the thwarts down, makes them buckle down. So when that happens, I just run a curved blade just along the inside, and it just takes a bit of width out of the side of the boat hull. Those couple of swipes with that blade just widens the space for this brass part, and it just helps it sit in there without buckling the thwarts down. So it's just worth doing that test fit, otherwise we end up with this looking slightly odd. We'll sort this cabin out now. I'm in two minds about glazing these windows. I'm not sure whether I will. The glazing would need to be pretty thin, so I'm not sure whether I'll do that. You'd have to use acetate, I think, I don't think crystal clear would make a neat enough job. I'd rather leave them open than put crystal clear in. I'm just checking that the overhang on the roof is the same on both sides and it's parallel to the bulkhead. Nice and strong. That cabin could be soldered to the deck, but I want to paint it separately rather than trying to paint the white in afterwards after I've painted the deck tan. So I'm going to leave that off for the time being and hope that I can get a good enough glue bond when I come to put that together. Whether you can see these, these are grab handles for the top of the cabin roof. Again, it would be possible to solder these, I suppose, but I don't risk it. I think I would ruin them if I tried to solder them, so I'm just going to glue them on and get them primed as soon as I can, and that'll help bind them. You can just see the rails on top. They're ever so small, but probably worth adding. I've just sealed those rails in with some super thin glue, and that floods down into the joint, but it doesn't block the detail of the railing itself, so it's a good option for a delicate part like that. We've got a prop to fit for this, which in this case is provided in the Pontos set. The one for the 45-foot launch wasn't, which is a bit strange, but we've got one for this. I'm going to have a look at the crutches in the Trumpeter kit just to see if they're going to be any better than the Pontos ones. They're a bit heavier, admittedly, but the advantage of them is that they're going to paint up a lot more neatly than the etch brass parts, and they're going to be, I think they'll be a better fit to the underside of the hulls. I've tried the Pontos crutches that I made up, and they're very difficult to get a nice neat fit under the boat. So I'm going to give these a go. I can always add the detail of the struts by drilling a small hole in the relevant ones and putting the Pontos struts in. I do prefer them to the Pontos ones, certainly for ease, because they take time to solder up and clean up, and I just don't think the results significantly better than the Trumpeter part, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to be going ahead and using the Trumpeter crutches. I can glue them directly to the hull bottoms and paint them together with the hull where the hulls are grey, and where the hulls are white on the fast motorboats, for example, I can just always glue these on afterwards. So let's give those a go and see what they look like. The slight difficulty with working out which crutch goes with which boat in the Trumpeter kit is that the boats are constructed in steps 63 through to 66, and the crutches themselves are fitted way back in section 12 here, so you've got to understand the positions of the boats and select the relevant crutches for the boat that you're working with. So in this case, the 42-foot motor launch was fitted in this position on the starboard side of the engine room vents. So we want crutches 28, 29 and 30 on the D sprue. And the other thing we have to do is cut the tabs off the bottom of these Trumpeter crutches, because they were originally they were designed to fit into slots on the deck, the plastic deck, which obviously we've covered up, so they need to be removed. Yeah, I'm going to go with the Trumpeter ones. They're much tighter fit to the bottom of the boat. The downside is that they don't have the base plate with the rivet detailing that comes with the Pontos parts, but all in all I think the Trumpeter parts look better when they're finished. I will add the braces that come with the Pontos set. But that just means I'm going to have to drill out the Trumpeter plastic part in order to fit those. When I take these braces off the fret, I leave a stub of the fret on the end of the part, and that just gives something for the glue to bind onto. And the brass then fits into the hole, so there's a little pin, and that just helps it locate a bit better. Okay, so I've fitted all the crutches to this launch, and this is going to get an overall coat of grey on the hull, so it's fine to glue those in place now. And I've added the Pontos braces to the underside, so that's a nice little detail, and I think they're just as good really. I think they give a better finish than the Pontos parts, the crutches at least. Okay, so that's the 42-foot motor launch ready for painting. Before I fit the cabin, I just want to go around and do the top rubbing strip. This is Mr. Hobby Aqueous RLM 79. It's a nice rich brown. So just taking a look at the cabin, I am going to try and glaze the cabin windows. I've got some very, very thin acetate which should do the job. We'll give it a go. Just see if I've got the right width with that. Yes, it looks alright. And I'm just going to fix this in place with some of the MIG Ultra Glue. It is pretty difficult to tell that there's anything in there, but just now and again you catch the glare. So not too difficult to do, and worth doing, I think. So the light sometimes just catches the reflection of the windows. So worth doing probably. So I'm going to give this a coat of matte varnish now. So we'll do that and then come back and we can fit the cabin, and then the propeller, and this launch will be done. We have the propeller to fit. That's the prop, and then the last thing to do is to fit the cabin, and I'm going to use some of the MIG glue for this, and that's just in case I make a mistake positioning it. I don't want to spoil all the paintwork that I've done. I think actually I'm just going to glue this at the front. That's fine, I'm happy with that. Not going to mess about with it anymore. There are actually some fair leads to fit. It's these parts here, 601. I suppose if I've got them, I ought to try fitting them. I can always paint them in after fitting. Okay, so that's the 42-foot launch finished, and that can go alongside all the others. I'll get some photographs of all these boats at the end of the video. Just before we finish with these boats for this week, I just want to go back to the work that we did last week on this 45-foot launch and the 32-foot cutter. And after part 33 last week, I had a comment from a viewer who was just querying the colour scheme that I'd used. This was originally painted in grey and white, and that comment just made me go back and check my references, which for all of these boats is the HMS Hood Association website. There's a really good colour scheme page on the Hood Association, and that details the colours that were known for the ship's boats. And I just misread the call out for this particular launch, and as you can see, I've gone back in and painted it in the correct navy blue and white. I'd just misread the instructions and I'd got it into my head that it was grey and white for some reason, but checking it again showed that I was wrong. So I've just gone back in and repainted the navy blue. The other thing that I did, you remember for the 45-foot launch that I'd lost the rear grating. So that's now fitted and painted. This is made up from some scrap grating and some plastic strip stock to form the surround to that. So that's come out pretty well. It's virtually identical to the original Pontos part. Some of the boats that were blue, so the 35-foot fast motor boats, were blue originally, but later on in wartime they were repainted grey. But it's not clear whether or not that treatment was done to all of the boats. So I've left this one in blue as per the Hood Association. And I think it adds a nice piece of variety as well to the boats. Some have got white bottoms, some haven't, like this launch that we've just finished. And some are grey and white as well, so it just adds a bit of variety. You remember that I'd also done the cutters with white bottoms, and again I'd made a mistake reading the colour call outs, and I've gone back in and repainted those entirely in grey. So that's it, we're all caught up with the boats that we've done so far, which is the 45-foot launch, the two 32-foot cutters, which is this one and the one underneath, and we have the 30-foot gig on top of this cutter. We have two 27-foot whalers, and last of all we've done the 42-foot launch. So that, I think, is all the open boats done for the ship. All the rest are cabin boats, mainly fast motor boats. There are 25-foot and 35-foot fast motor boats to do, and we'll do that next week. Okay, so that's those open boats finished now. I'm just going to position them on the model just to take some photographs for the end of the video so you can see what they look like in position, but I'm not going to glue them at this stage, and that's because I want to be able to position them relative to the other boat, so I make sure that I'm leaving room for the full complement of boats when I come to fit them. So that's it for part 34. In next week's video I'm going to be carrying on and building the fast motor boats. So I think there are 5 or 6 to build, and we'll be getting on with those over the course of the next week. They'll probably take all week, I think. But at the end of that, all the ship's boats will be finished, I hope. Over the weekend, I'll be putting together a short video just as a commemoration of the ship. Most of you will be aware that are following the build that the ship was lost on the 24th of May 1941. So on Monday it'll be 80 years since the loss of the ship and the tragic loss of over 1,400 men on that ship. So that's it for this part. I'll be getting on with the fast motorboats over the course of the next week, and I'll bring you that as usual next Friday in part 35. So in the meantime, look after yourselves everybody, stay safe, and I'll see you in another 7 days. Bye for now.